thought we could look through this really, I think, chic knitting pattern book. I picked up this book at the local yarn store. I was buying some yarn for Christmas presents. I made hats, and I just couldn't resist this really lovely pattern book. I think that one of the first things that drew me in was this soft matte paper. Feels very thick. It is soft cover, so I'm not quite sure if it's a book or if it's a magazine. When I look through pattern books to potentially buy, I try to find ones that have more than a few patterns that I think I will actually make, and I felt that this one had quite a few. I think it's a bit more modern. And it's not quite scattered. It's like how seating would be, where you want to have one seat between the two in front, or maybe like bricklaying. And I just thought this looked, well, very chic. So, I think we should get into it. And flipping the page to the table of contents, we can see our first photographic image of what I imagine will be one of the patterns. I haven't personally done a lot of color work, which is when you alternate colors within a pattern. I do have a little bit of practice with it, but my color work is one of my UFOs in the knitting world and fiber arts world. They call unfinished objects UFOs. And I think that's really cute. So, along the side we have the contents. And we have all of our chapters, pretty traditional table of contents with a modern graphic design. And I think we're just gonna go ahead and flip through and take our time. We have a preface. I haven't read this preface, but I'm sure I will one of these days. It talks a little bit about Dee and Jonna. I'm still not sure which way that goes. So we have that, talking about how some of these patterns were born and came to be. The beautiful butterflies on this one. Let's see if I can. Sorry about that shadow there. It's just the way I have to do my setup right now. But anyway, you can see this is an illustration, and I must note that the way they've drawn this mohair silk yarn is so detailed, and it really feels like it's real yarn coming off the page. I think they did a nice job with that. This is an artist who clearly does quite a bit of planning for her pattern making. It says butterfly sampler, and we have a gorgeous square. I'm assuming this is the sample. The sampler color wheel, the yarn colors to be used in order to achieve the look, a note that the butterflies will be marbled white, and she has a really cute stamp right here. It says D, and then this little sapling illustration and Hardwicke. The sample itself is really beautiful. I'm drawn to this lavender color, and I think butterflies are going to always be something that I enjoy. Very good. Okay. Oh, we have quite a bit of book to get through, so let's keep going. Ah, yes. These are knitting abbreviations, so if you have been knitting for a long time, or even some time, you might know a lot of these abbreviations already. But for new knitters, and maybe you haven't done a certain stitch in a long time, it's really nice to have these abbreviations here. Just helps get through the patterns a bit easier. Here are some notes about charts, leftover yarns, and garment sizing, which is important. If you don't get your gauge right, the size of whatever you're making, especially a sweater or something like that, can get really thrown off. I've done that before. Now, I'm not going to show these patterns for too long because I don't want to show the entire contents of the book. This was something that I purchased, and I'd like the artist to get credit. So, I just thought we would enjoy primarily the pictures of these beautiful works. Now, this is more delicate. I'm not sure if you can see through the camera, but it looks like it was made with a very fine yarn. This is something that you might be able to wear 3 seasons: spring, summer, and fall. Or in winter, layered with, you know, some sort of sweater. But it does look quite thin. As you can tell, the theme of this book is, I would say, pastoral. You can see the fields of wheat, or maybe it's in the fall and whatever plant this is going into dormancy for the winter. And I think this sweater is one of the reasons I was drawn to this book. I really like when a sweater has this thick neck. I just think it looks structured, but in a cozy way. And what they're really showing off in this photo here is this scarf or wrap, which changes from dark blue to light blue. And it has yellow leaves with some red, sort of, you know, berries or smaller leaves. I think they did a good job with this hair as well. Maybe I'll try that style one day. Now we're getting into the pattern. Achillea. I'm assuming this is Achillea, like Achilles. Again, they seem to be featuring this wrap. It's being worn around the hip, but I'm sure you could wear this as a neck scarf as well. It seems like it's a versatile piece. Again, I'm sure this sweater is also part of this book. So, here's again. It's an interesting checker pattern because some of the checks, it looks like every other row, the checks are a bit smaller in scale. And that really brings some visual interest. It's almost an optical illusion, in a way. And the flowers. Break up the check pattern and give it a more organic feel. So we have this geometric pattern mixed with something a bit more organic in terms of design. This is the motif, and here, I think generally in art, motif just means the part of the pattern that repeats, almost like a tessellation. And there's the entire chart over here. This next one is dreaming in the park. They featured it as a neck scarf. Looks like it's maybe a bit smaller than the first one. And here is a close-up of this gold and green and what looks like gray for the background scarf. It's an somewhat abstracted flower or plant. This is the top, and then the leaves and stem, potentially. And again, a top of a flower with a stem. A bit more simplified in terms of the shapes that are being made. So I think that qualifies as an abstraction. And as we'll see in this book, they show us the motif chart and the master chart. We have come across the image from the cover, and it is also the result of the sketch we looked at earlier. The butterfly sampler. we should see. Lovely. The main color looks more of a gray or maybe even a slate than the purple we saw in the sketch. Here's the grand motif. So it looks like there is no motif because this is just all worked without any one piece repeating. It's a bit more scattered, and so it's probably just easier to make it as one. I don't want to linger on these too long because again, it is the designs of someone who I think should be paid for their work. So if any of these you find interesting, then I encourage you to find D. Hardwicke's pattern and Jonna or Jonna, Helin, and make sure the artist is given the credit and getting paid for their work. This is another sheer scarf. It might be the same sheer one that we saw earlier. Clematis. I like how they have combined the pink and the off-white, looks to be. I'm personally more drawn towards larger florals over small florals. So I think this is something that I may attempt to make in the future. I can just tell that this is something I would wear. Again, I don't want to show the chart for too long, but I can tell that that is really, really pretty. This next one is Frankie. I love how this photographer has chosen to put the black in front of the green. I've always enjoyed that combination, and I don't know if I could explain it. I just think that the black enhances the richness of the green, and maybe that's why I like it so much. This piece feels very modern to me. And I do think it is interesting. I bet it is quite warm. I'm not sure if it's something that I could pull off, but the model does look quite good in this here. And I'm sure there's somebody out here whose style would go well with this. You know, there's all kinds of styles out there, and we often change our style, which I think is a good thing. I don't want to share that too long. Achillea again, but this one is embroidered. That's interesting. Maybe these flowers are embroidered onto the piece. In the wild, I think this pattern looks quite accessible if you're just beginning color work. Potentially because you have larger sections of colors. So you're not required to, dance with the yarn as much and change colors frequently, which requires a bit of attention and maybe a little bit of counting. Usually So you can work through this center part and then focus for a while on the green, and then come back and learn some more color work and counting, and then have a break. Something like that. I can imagine this is something that I would make. Again, that's just my opinion. Just personally what I like. These larger motifs. I keep wanting to use the word motif, but I think what I mean is larger pattern elements. Oh, well, this top isn't knit, but that is a really interesting top. And skirt. In terms of design, I think it's very unique. I haven't seen that a lot. But back to the knit piece. I do think that is something that I might try. Alba. This is the sweater that I mentioned earlier. I think these thick neck cuffs are really nice on sweaters. This one happens to look more like a mock neck style, which I do like, but I also like when it's rolled over like that and thick, and it's not a mock neck. Maybe it's just a crew neck. This is something that doesn't have color work, but sweaters can get quite technical. I think I will try to make this eventually. We are expecting our new baby in the spring, so I'm working on a sweater for the new baby, and maybe I will share my progress of that sweater. But when I finish that, maybe I will make myself this sweater. I think this is the piece, the kind of piece that would stand the test of time. It's something you can have in your closet for a really long time, and maybe even pass it down to younger family members. Here's a close-up of the sweater. And all the folds. I do like the photography in this book. Parterre. So this is patches, almost like a quilt, but it is probably knit across. And you change the colors as you go. I think this more colorful design is very attractive. I tend to wear neutrals quite a bit, but I've been trying to get into wearing more color because why not? You know, color is a good thing, I think. Oh, interesting layout of knitted squares. Here's all of the squares. There's that one, but again, that's proprietary or artistic intellectual property, and I don't want to show that for too long. I know I've mentioned that before, but I thought it would be worth repeating and letting you know why I'm breezing through those pages pretty quickly. This is Sally. The sweater, I'm assuming, not the model. Well, we know who the model is. She was credited in the beginning. The sweater is the Sally sweater. And I also really like this cut or shape. I think if I were to make this, I would go in and make the neck a little bit longer and fold it over. And I wonder if that would give that nice thick neck piece. But that could also throw off this well thought out design. So it would be sort of a game time decision, as they say. You know, whoever says that. I guess I do. I wonder if this has mohair woven in. It looks like there's a bit of a halo. A yarn halo is what they call that fuzzy effect that mohair has. Here's a close-up. So it looks to me like this is either mohair or some sort of fine wool. Got a the ribbing. Love a good ribbing detail on a sweater. Obviously, I have ribbing on my sweater right now. In fact, it goes all the way up. This stem looks familiar, and this is their version of a rose. Very cute. I really like this blue color of the main color. And they've put it against the black. This looks like the pattern Frankie from earlier. And it brings out this blue nicely. And the stem detail. Limonium apricot. Limonium. I wonder if that's like lemon. And of course, apricot. This is the more purpley tone that I thought we were going to see in the butterfly sampler. So it's nice to see it here. You can see how the sun comes through. So it's made with a finer yarn. Oh, there's our chart, which we can just skip over. Ah, under the midnight moon. I saw this one earlier. Looks like we have a sketch. I think these sketches are quite inspiring. And I think I may try this sketching out something and then turning it into a chart. I think there are websites that can turn any kind of artwork that you make 2D, two-dimensional, and it turns it into a knitting chart. I think you can get some very creative patterns doing that. Just fly by those. January. Trying to see if this is a long sweater or if it's a jumpsuit or if she is wearing dark pants and it's a regular standard length sweater. I guess we'll have to flip the page and find out. I still can't tell. Maybe it's a dress. Maybe I can peek. Ah, it says that it's a cloud dress. The January's is a cloud dress. I like the V-neck. Garden party. We saw this earlier in the book as well. These smaller florets. In quite a bit of color work detail. It certainly is giving garden party. A nice display. As I'm looking through this, I am remembering that something I liked about these was the sweaters. Because I like this sweater also. think that with these shapes, you could really use any color yarn or mix colors, and the shape is timeless. And the color work, whether you choose to do it or not, or do a different solid color, makes it an option to tailor it to your personality. This is the Liberty. I do like the color that they've chosen here. It's forest green. Pressings. Pressings. It's like almost like a handkerchief size. I wonder if it's thin enough to be used as like a head wrap, some sort of hair wrap. Could be interesting. We have another gorgeous illustration, and you can see what these other colored elements are across this piece. I really do like her illustrations and sketches. I think that this one is nice because of the bright color. I think that this bright color gives us a nice contrast from what we've seen so far. Oh, there's our chart. Wallflower. Well, they've decided to not break up the text, and it just says wallflower. Seven times. So, this pattern is wallflower. Another smaller style, like a kerchief, handkerchief. There's our chart. The peony. And this one is a bit larger, more of a shawl, maybe even a wrap for some. what this element is here. Maybe it's some sort of strap to connect the ends so it stays secured. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell in this picture. Didn't mean to show that for so long. I guess it's just there. Yeah, I think that little element is a strap, which is pretty nifty and useful. You could also tie a wrap, I suppose. The walled garden. This is certainly intricate color work. To me, this seems like a more advanced pattern in terms of color work. Maybe this is something I would get to one day, but not quite yet. I think I'd rather practice on larger elements. And here we have a close-up. I do like this pink and forest green. And this close-up really shows just how intricate this is. And there's our chart. And that was the last one. It sort of snuck up on us. We have this lovely illustration. And there's a little note down here that says thank you. To these people listed who probably contributed either to the book directly or to the lives of those who made the book. It's like a special thanks section, which is nice to see. And again, that's really nice illustration. reached the end of our book. I definitely was drawn to the sweaters primarily. I think that the shapes of the sweater classics, and like I said before, I could see myself making them in different colors. I really hope that this was a relaxing flip through, and we'll see you next time.